Morning, Gills fans. Hope you're all well and welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is the return of matchday review shows, and what an opening weekend it was for the Gills as Mark Bonner's men ran out comfortable 4-1 winners against Carlisle United. And I'm pleased to say, returning to co-host is Rhys from German Gills. You know all the deal that you have to do with him. If you've not done it, why not go and do it straight away? Subscribe to his channel. And I'm also pleased to say that for a Carlisle perspective, we are joined by Lee Rooney from the Brunton Bugle, which is a Carlisle United podcast. I'll put their details in the description, as always, at the bottom of this video. So please go and give them a follow and check their content out because it is very, very good. And just revel in it, I suppose, for the first weekend. No, all jokes aside, obviously, we've been here plenty of times before on the end of defeats and performances that Carlisle essentially put in at key times yesterday. So we do appreciate Lee's time. So we will start, as always, at 2 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Rhys, team news came in for the Gills. Probably one or two question marks over what the 11 was going to be. I think most of it had picked itself. There was probably a question mark over who was going to start in goal after Jake Turner missing the friendly last week against Woking, but he did get the nod. I think the only surprise for me was that Armani Little came in from the off.
Yeah, that was my only surprise as well, actually. Yeah, but because obviously the interchangeable position could be Johnny Williams, of course. But yeah, it was the only thing that I can quite pinpoint as well as a selection. And when Luke did his 11 yesterday, I think that was one of the only things that he didn't predict. So yeah, I think most Gills fans were surprised to see Little in there. But other than that, it's a very predictable 11.
Yeah, I went with Johnny Williams in the 10, so got that slightly wrong. And I also thought he might have gone with Glenn Morris, having played 90 minutes last week, but I thought Jake was very good. So the Gills team in full was Jake Turner in goal, a back four of Hutton, Eamon, Masterson and Clark. It was then Little and Mackenzie tasked with protecting said back four. Timmy Dieng in the 10, slightly unfamiliar role for him in his time at Gillingham. And then it was Aaron Rowe and Jack Nolan supporting Jacob Wakelin. For Carlisle, it was Harry Lewis in goal, a back three of Hayden, Thomas, Mellish. Wing backs were Davis and Williams. Then there was a midfield trio of Neil, Barkley, and Vella. And it was Adu, Ajay, and Charlie White up top. Lee, any shocks from your point of view in terms of that starting 11 or not? Because I know I spoke to Ross on Wednesday, for the match preview show, and he said you had loads of issues in terms of injuries in the middle of the park. So did that sort of just pick itself, that 11?
Well, the biggest shock of the lot is the fact that, as you mentioned there, Ben Williams was playing at left back. Well, he hadn't even signed for us until Friday. And he was basically, we only announced he signed at 1:30 on Saturday. So he was 100% the biggest shock for everyone there. It was kind of like, oh, well, right, we've got these lads signed up now. Interestingly, I mean, jumping ahead here, I thought he actually had a really good game. Tired a bit badly because obviously he's not maybe had one club consistently through pre-season.
Mm-hmm. No, of course, that doesn't help.
But the midfield picked itself, unfortunately, for us. But I literally only Barkley's a centre back, really. He's not a midfielder. So Vella and Neil were the two midfielders. And to be honest, they're two very similar midfielders. We really lacked maybe someone who could play a little bit further forward as a number 10. So it was quite a functional midfield, to say the least. And possibly slightly our downfall in the end for the match. But yeah, the team picked itself. We felt that the back three was always going to be that back three.
Yeah.
And the rest of the team, as expected.
Fair enough. Right, before we get into the timeline, as I always do, Rhys is very aware, Lee, I just write down a paragraph of how I thought the game was as an overview. And I've put down, felt we deserved to win the game, but 4-1 certainly was a little bit flattering. Neither keeper was fully extended throughout, and we were perhaps more solid and critical in the big moments. So I will come to you again, Lee, for that one as an opposition fan. Is that a fair assessment of the game?
More or less, yeah. I mean, I think if it ended up a 2-2 draw, I don't think anyone would have been hugely surprised based on the chances and opportunities in the game. It was just kind of, you guys were much more consistent in terms of the way you played. You were fairly solid for the majority of it. Whereas us, we had some really good moments, but then switched off for long periods and just made silly mistakes. I mean, there's a strong argument that at least 3 of the 4 goals are avoidable for us, probably.
Yeah, and we'll get onto them in more detail, definitely.
Possibly, yeah. But yeah, basically, I kind of feel like just about right. I think, to be honest, based on the fact that you guys were pretty solid and consistent, a win for you guys is probably the fair result. It's just frustrating for us that we've actually played probably better than we have done in a long time and come on the end of a 4-1 spanking.
Yeah, and that's why I said the fact that we were solid and more clinical in the key moments. That was ultimately probably the difference because, there's certainly a couple of goals you've absolutely handed to us on a plate. Rhys, your quick assessment before we get into the whys and wherefores.
Yeah, I thought it was the battle of the back foot. I think it was a period of times where both teams at some point were on the back foot, and it was the attacking team who was going to make the most of those opportunities. And obviously it was Gillingham at the end of the day. But you know what, Carlisle had their opportunities throughout, which we'll talk about, particularly in the first half, and actually getting one back as well. You know what, if we actually walked off that pitch and it was 2-2, I think a lot of us would be going, it'd be a fair result. If you kind of minus the last sort of 15 minutes of the game, I suppose it was that really. But a battle of the back foot. Both teams were on the back foot at some point, and we were just more clinical in those moments compared to Carlisle.
Yeah, it just felt like we had more natural match winners, which is very rare for us to say,
Yeah.
and a pleasant turnaround from what we've had to watch over the last few years. Right, let's get into that first half then. Rhys, I'll stay with you. I thought we started the game as well as I've seen a start a football match in a long, long time. We were on the front foot. We were intense. We were hunting in packs. We didn't let them settle. And the goal ultimately comes from just, I don't want to say wearing them down because you're only 2 minutes in, but it's a ball into the box. We make it difficult for the keeper. He comes and flaps at it somewhat and it drops into a dangerous area. We're then aware enough to get to that ball that drops. Aaron Rowe has a shot blocked / saved. I'm not sure if it's Lewis or a defender or the combination of both. And then again, we're aware and clinical in the key moment. And that's when Timmy Dieng puts his left foot round it and wraps it into the back of the net. And we couldn't have asked for a better start, could we?
I wonder if Carlisle regret changing the sides for the toss happened, because I think the Rainimen probably helped that goal to the first 2 minutes.
I honestly hadn't even twigged. Like, we scored and I went to pause. I went, oh, we're shooting towards the Rainimen. Like, I was just so excited about being back in the ground for a proper game. I didn't realise that they turned us around and had us going that way first half.
I wonder if the 12th man had a big part to play in that as well, because you've got the excitement of the season starting and you've got 7,000 fans in the ground, and all of a sudden you've got 2 minutes and it's like we were the home team. Like, that's it, we are the home team, so we should be doing that from the off. And I genuinely do wonder if us shooting towards the rain with the first half helped that first 5 minutes and got us and helped us, supported us getting that goal, because it is a well worked ball, gets good ball in the box by Nolan, and there's a bit of pinball, and Timmy Dieng ultimately was the one that was most alert and put it in the back of the net. But if you're shooting towards the Rainimen, you've got that hype from the start of the season and a packed Rainimen. Of course, you're going to feel good going a bit more and with a bit more confidence. You're going to take your chance, and that's what happened.
Yeah, sorry, Lee, we've just divulged a little there because we had 18 goalless first halves last season, and obviously, normally we like to shoot towards the Rainimen second period, so we're going towards that empty stand in the first half, and there's been question marks about should we change it, and you ultimately helped us out even then as well. But from your point of view, there's got to be question marks over Harry Lewis a little bit.
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion with our fans. He was excellent for Bradford a couple of seasons ago. We saw that, but since he's coming to us, he's coming to a team that's been losing, and as a result, he's not exactly playing with confidence.
No.
Although, if anything, the problem with the first goal is he tried to be too confident. He tried to catch it. And
if he just comes and punches it, you're probably no problem at all.
He had 2 or 3 players in front of him, like 2 of your lads and 1 of ours. He's trying to catch it over them, and he isn't the tallest keeper in the world. I'm just thinking, if that's Thomas Foley, I totally get it why he goes to try and catch it. He plucks that out of the air, no bother. But Harry Lewis isn't going to do that. And Simo did say in his post-match interview, he said, like, it's one I felt he should have punched. Just get it out of the area and then regroup. And he spills it. Either him or the defender gets a block in, decent block for the first chance, but then when it fell to Dieng, it was always going to end up in the back of the net. It was just too good an opportunity, and at that point, it was kind of our fans. But we were chatting with in WhatsApp groups and online stuff. We're all like, "Well, here we go, same old Carlisle," and it was kind of like you guys were flying, but actually, we found our feet pretty well after that, and sort of took control of the first half. I think it's fair to say.
I thought I said at half time, it was a half of 2 halves. I thought we started really well, scored the goal, and it settled down, and we weren't really under the cosh. But I thought from probably the 20-minute mark, you were much the better team. You pinned us back. You didn't allow us to press, or you played through it. And then you had some good chances. And I've put credit Carlisle, stuck to the task, grew into the game, and then controlled it until half time. I think the best chance you had, the first real chance you had, I think there was a ball flung in from the left. And was it your right back, Archie Davis?
Yeah.
sort of diving header, but headed it into the ground and up and over, rather than if he gets a proper contact and goes back across goal, it's probably got a chance. But at that point, you're probably thinking, right, we've settled and now we're in the game.
Yeah, I mean, Davis hasn't scored a career goal yet, so that probably shows with that attempt. But I mean, the thing that stood out for me for that was it was a great ball from Ben Williams, and he actually set pieces were great, and he tired towards the end, but like he actually was probably our best player first half. Actually, I thought his threat with balls into the box was good, and we saw a bit of John Mellish getting forward as he likes to do from centre back. And yeah, there was a lot of encouraging signs. Our pressing was like it was like, okay, this is what we've been waiting for a while, and it was disappointing not to go into the break without scoring. I mean, I'm sure you come onto it now, but like Charlie Wyke, that chance, 9 times out of 10, he puts that in the back of the net, and he just. I don't know if the defender maybe gets a touch, possibly, but he does the right thing. He composes himself, sets the keeper down, but he just gets a little bit too much on it and puts it onto the bar.
Yeah, that was right at the end of the half, wasn't it? Again,
Yeah.
I'd written down on top of that chance, the first one for the right back. Carlisle were pushing us back, which we've already mentioned. I think there was a glancing header from Aaron Hayden that went wide from a set piece. There was another one where he sort of half-volley, but it was a centre back's attempt, wasn't it? We were still a threat though, weren't we, Rhys? I think there was one where we managed to turn over possession. Robbie McKenzie, really, really good tackle, and I want to talk about McKenzie in a bit more detail at the end. I think he gave it to Jacob Wakelin, who then fed Ramo Hutton, and we know Hutton in terms of delivery on his right foot is good, but it was nice to see him trust his left. And unfortunately, from our point of view, it was straight down the throat of Harry Lewis. But it meant that Carlisle knew that they were still, in a game, despite us leading, they were bossing things at that point. But yeah, I think Lee's already given us his assessment on the Charlie Wyke chance there, but I just want to ask what you thought of it. For me, it felt like he just had a little bit too much time. I think if that comes into the box and he's sort of running across the defender first time, he probably scores. But he comes in, he has a touch, then he thinks, right, I've got to compose myself, which he does really well. But by the time he actually makes contact, I think he's probably just leaning back a little bit, and that's why it hits the crossbar rather than nestling in the back of the net.
I think that's fair to say. It's quite a weird one. I actually think you're right, Lee. I think I think it was Amro Marston. I can't remember who it was. Did get a slight nick on it, but I even think if that didn't happen, it was still clipping the bar regardless. You're right. I think it takes a little bit too much time to set himself. And I wonder if it's one of those, because there was a chance before that he skewed to the left-hand side of the post. Was that the order of that as well, I think?
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was possibly a play on his mind. I don't know if I caught the wrong order or not, but regardless, there's a lot of pressure to score there, and you can overthink things. And I wonder if that fell on Wyke's shoulders a little bit too much pressure and just got it wrong. And like you say, Lee, 9 times out of 10, I would expect Wyke to score that as well. And I expect most strikers to put it in the back of the net at this level. But unfortunately for him, I just think took a bit too much time, probably overthought it a little bit and just put it onto the bar, unfortunately, for Carlisle.
Yeah, it was a strange one because it wasn't probably the easiest chance in the world either, because it's a cross that comes over and Aimer actually misses the initial thing. He slips.
Yeah, there's a bit of a swipe, isn't there? Yeah.
And it comes to Wyke at a very awkward height. If you watch it back, it comes out of sort of knee, sort of waist height almost, and he has to get it under control first to have any chance. And I think that's why he's like, I just need to set myself here. And yeah, I think a few weeks into the season, when he's a little bit sharper and a little bit ready, I think he probably just buries that. He probably takes that first touch and just hammers the thing into the back of the net.
Literally just nicked my question. I said if that comes a month in, he probably scores as well. Yeah, because he's up and running at the moment. People are just still trying to find their feet, find their touch and their confidence and that type of thing. Similarly to probably Harry Lewis for the goal. He's probably caught between two minds. The safety option, like you said, was come and punch it, but he's thinking, right, let's go and make a big statement and claim it and settle us all down. But unfortunately, then he does completely the opposite, and it costs you a goal. Yeah. But that was half time. It wasn't a game of loads of chances. Like I say, it felt like a half of two halves. And I said to Luke at half time, Rhys, I thought both teams would probably have been fairly happy in the sense that we'd come out and started really well. We were front-footed and brave, which is what Mark Bonner said he wants us to be. We got our goal. Then there were bits that clearly need improving on. We got a little bit slack in possession. But from Lee's point of view and Carlisle, Paul Simpson was probably thinking, right, we've recovered from conceded inside, 200 seconds. We've created chances. We've had plenty of the ball. Let's, same again. That would have been my assessment at half time.
I think that's pretty accurate, actually. I was very impressed with Carlisle's build-up play in the first half when they were on the front foot. I thought it was quite nice. I thought we found it very difficult to deal with, and I wonder if again that was probably first game of the season defensive, not confusions, but I do think that we found it very difficult sometimes to match Carlisle's build-up play. But I do think we came out of the first half a little bit fortuitous to not have conceded. But in the same merit, we've, it's nice to be on the side of Lady Luck occasionally, and being 1-0 up at half time. I think actually a fairer reflection would have been 1-1. Really, I genuinely think that. But it's actually quite nice from the seasons we've had previously to come out on top of a little bit of luck and try to use that as a platform to try and build into the second half as well. But yeah, I think both sides can be relatively happy of how that half ended, with Carlisle growing into the game and Gillingham coming out 1-0 up at half time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then obviously second half is another fast start from us, and it's another assist from Carlisle. Unfortunately, Lee, from your point of view, you didn't learn from the errors you made in the first sort of 2 minutes of the first half, and you gifted us the second as well. And I spoke to, like I said, Ross, who was on the preview show, and I spoke to you on your podcast. And Tyrrell Thomas was someone that's been highly rated, who you've been very impressed with through pre-season, but unfortunately he's had an absolute brain fart. Just doesn't look, does he? Yeah. Horrible pass, and to be fair, Jacob Wakeling's still got, I think, plenty to do. He's got to get it out of his feet and get away from that centre half, and he's running away from goal, which is always a difficult finish. But for a team that's just managed to fight their way back into the game, to then go and do that must have been absolutely. You must be like pulling your hair out in the away end.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. As you mentioned there, Thomas has actually looked really, really good in pre-season. He's looked a really good signing. Ben Barkley's the player who's next to him. Barkley normally plays centre back rather than midfield, and you wonder if maybe that sort of influence that he thinks that Barkley's sitting a bit deeper. But just get your head up, because like Simo said after the game, like it's a real big mistake, because I've said all game I don't want us to be passing the ball backwards all the time. I want us to be thinking on the forward, front foot and thinking forward. And Barkley, it's actually a really simple pass to Barkley to play it forward, and then we're on the front foot again. We get moving, but for some reason he doesn't get his head up. He plays a really short, terrible pass. Wakeland does really well to nip in and get through on goal. There's an argument in your head as well. We're looking back at it, that can Lewis do a little bit better, actually? Because
this is what I wanted to ask you. Sorry to interject.
Flat-footed.
Because Ross messaged me last night and said that arguably there's 3 of the goals that Lewis were at fault for, and I was thinking that seems a bit harsh. So I wanted to ask you this morning. Obviously the first one, but it's not in the corner. Is it because it's not in the corner?
Yeah, it's fairly close to him, and he's just a little bit flat-footed on it, which is not like him normally. He's quite a good shot stopper, and we'll get onto it later, but I think as well, even there's an argument on the 4th goal. Can he do a little bit better on that one, really? Again, it comes from a bit of a distance, and it's a really well-struck shot, but I feel like, again, it just doesn't move his feet. And I wonder if that's a confidence thing, I feel like he can get a lot closer to it than he did on that one. I think the 3rd one, those people are arguing about near post, obviously we'll get into it in a minute, but it's just a really well struck one, that one. But yeah, I think the problem is with Lewis, a lot of our fans have been gunning for him for quite a while, because he was a big money signing. We paid like pushing on 200 grand for him in January, and he's not shown really what he's capable of yet. And I think part of the problem is we were a terrible team last season and defensively awful. So yeah, it was always under pressure. To then start a game of the season like this doesn't help things either. And we've got behind him our sub-keepers called Gabe Breeze, who come through our academy. So obviously fans are always desperate for players in the academy to do well. So there's a bit of pressure there in terms of fans want Rhys to be given a chance. And it's, I do feel a bit for Harry, because by all accounts he's a really nice lad, and he's actually made the effort to move up to Carlisle. So not all players do. I just kind of want to see a little bit more from him at the moment. We're just not quite seeing it. But yeah, there is an argument he could have done. I'm not saying he's at fault for them. I just think he can do better on some of the goals as well.
So maybe again, it's just similar to the White chance that a month down the line he's probably moving his feet a bit better, and he saves it. Just quickly, because you mentioned him a couple of minutes ago, and obviously you're saying you feel a bit sorry for Harry Lewis. He's come into a team that was struggling last season, and that's always tough. You've got a youngster on the bench. So I just wanted to ask, what was the thinking behind the releasing of Thomas Holy? Because obviously, for me, I thought he was very good for you in the promotion season. And it can't have all been on Tomasz that you were bottom of the league for the first half of last season. So what was the thinking there? Firstly, behind removing him from the number one position and replacing him with Lewis, and then ultimately just saying you're off.
Simo seemed to have always been a little bit of a downer with Holy and frustrated with him because I think he wasn't quite doing the things he wanted him to do at times.
Right.
Whether he was capable of doing those things, I don't know. But the start of last season, 3 or 4 games in, he was dropped in favour of Jockle Anderson, who was on loan from Reading. Now, he'd had 3 or 4 really good loan spells at, I think, the likes of Exeter, Stevenage and Morecambe. He'd done really well.
Yeah.
So, like, everyone was like, we've got a decent keeper. He's going to do well. In the 7 games he made, I think in 5 or 6 of them, he made mistakes that cost us the game. He got sent off in one of them for bringing a player down outside the area when he got caught out by the old hiding behind him when he rolled the ball out.
Right.
He was just an absolute. I mean, he gave away a penalty in his first game as well. He was just a nightmare from start to finish, and Simo had to swallow his pride and bring Tomasz back in. And Tomasz did okay for a while, and then in December he had a run of about 3 or 4 games where he was making a mistake every single game, and he got to the point where Simo was like, I can't keep picking him here, so he had to actually give Gabe Breeze his debut on Boxing Day at Fleetwood.
So you ended up using 4 keepers that season.
Yeah,
which
so Breeze
accentuates the problems that you were having.
Exactly. So Breeze come in, and actually for the 3 games he was in, he did okay. We think we won 1 of them, drew 1 and lost 1, but he did okay. Actually, he looked pretty solid. But then Harry Lewis was available for the big money that we were throwing about at that point, and yeah, he was all. I think the idea with Lewis is that Lewis is actually more of a sweeper keeper, as you probably saw yesterday. He comes out and he actually did that really well yesterday. He swept up 2 or 3 times.
There was one first half where I think Wakeling threatened to get him behind, and he was, because I said to Boz next to me, I said, "Cool, his starting position's really good there. He was just on the edge of his knee rather than being on his 6-yard box."
He's very good at that, and he's actually very good at the ball at his feet. He plays it out pretty well. His kicking was generally good yesterday. It's just, like I said, the problem is he's not the biggest. So he's never going to be that good on crosses. He needs to learn to start punching it a bit more rather than trying to catch it. With the 3 defenders we've got in there at the back now, he should have better protection anyway, which he didn't really have at times last season. And yeah, I just feel there's a confidence thing there as well at the moment. I mean, that does worry me a little bit. But yeah, that's the reason we let Hurley go in the end, was just because we had Gabe Breeze coming through. Because Breeze had done so well in those 3 games. He was given a 3.5-year contract to give him time to develop. He's only got 20. Yeah. So the feeling was, if we're going to have 3 goalkeepers, we can't have Tomasz Holy as a 3rd choice goalkeeper. It's not really fair on him as much as anything. So we let him go, and we actually brought a lad called Jude Smith in from Newcastle United over the summer to be a 3rd keeper, so that potentially we can loan out Breeze at some point, someone else to give him some game time. Is the plan. So yeah, that was the feeling behind Holy going.
That makes sense. It was obviously only asked, obviously, because he's former Gills, and he was very good for us before he moved to Ipswich. Rhys, back to you and back to the game. But it's always nice to talk about former players. Shortly after the goal was probably one of the only couple of negatives, and that was we had to make a change. Timmy Dieng went down, and it's come out since the game that he was feeling his hamstring. So fingers crossed we've got to that early enough, and he was replaced by Johnny Williams, which didn't turn out to be a bad change. But I've written at 2-0, I felt we were comfortable. I thought we were sitting in, we was able to dictate where the game was played for a period. We was able to dictate at what pace the game was played at, because we knew that Carlisle were then going to have to take a few more chances. And with people like Johnny Williams, Aaron Rowe, Nolan, Jacob Wakeling willing to stretch defences, we were going to be able to play on the counter a little bit and potentially go and get another goal or 2. And I remember saying to Boz, if we don't do anything silly here, just don't give them an in. And then 2 minutes later, Carlisle scored. Commentator's curse. Luckily, it wasn't on camera, that one, but I'll be big enough to admit that I said it. So I do apologise to Gills fans. It's a simple enough ball that's flung into our box. I thought we actually did all right in the first phase. I think, if I remember rightly, we actually might have made the first contact. But then there's a bit of pinball, and then to be fair to John Mellish, who apparently scored a hat-trick last season against Peterborough, and 2 of them were like goal of the month contenders. Sorts his feet out, does what he needs to do, which is get it on target. I think there's a little bit of a nick, and suddenly it's game on again at 2-1, isn't it?
It is. It's a good ball into the box. And I just got to say, I think there's always this, if you're 2-0 up, it's a funny old scoreline, isn't it? Because, you go for a third, you try and hold on to it, depending on the time of the game it is, and so on. But yeah, Carlisle had to take a couple of risks, but I think they've always had a chance, and I think that's and they took one of them. The ball into the box is a good one, and actually, it was Max Amer who got the first contact. Do you know what? 8 times out of 10, that header goes out of the box, and we deal with it. But it was blocked, I think. By it was Mellish. It was blocked by Mellish, then got his feet sorted out, and then managed to get the shot on goal. And then you go to it's a good finish. Does take a nick, like you say, but it's a good finish. And it's just at that point you kind of I reckon that most Gills fans in the ground would have gone, "Oh, here we go." We're going to be twitching here a little because Gills of last seasons and seasons previously, that would have been the moment where we would be hanging on to try and get something.
Last season, we didn't score 2 goals, so I'm not sure we even got to that point many times.
That's a fair point.
But this comes back to what Mark Bonham said in his press conference, wasn't it? It's all right, the team spirit and the togetherness in the changing room or on the training pitch or when they're playing ping pong and darts in the players' lounge. That's great. When we want to find out about the real togetherness and the team spirit is when things go slightly wrong and someone makes a mistake. And there were mistakes and bits that went wrong yesterday. And I thought we handled it fairly well. I'm not saying with a finished article, which is encouraging in itself, but it felt like it just felt slightly different. And I think it has felt slightly different since Mark Bonner came in.
It is. And I think this is also a testament to getting a lot of your transfer business done early, isn't it? Because you can create that cohesion, which a lot of teams struggle with at the start of seasons. I kind of feel, even though we've got a couple of injuries, we kind of feel like a little bit of a squad already, which is a really nice feeling to be going into games with. And I think because of that, going 2-1, the game when it turns to 2-1, I think Gills of last season would have looked and gone, "Oh my goodness, we've only got 2 and they've just got 1 back." But I kind of feel like, oh, we've got 2, we can go and get a third if we want now. Like, I kind of feel maybe the mentality slightly shifted because of the signings that we've made. We made them early on. We've created that, that chemistry already. We're starting to still to build that. I think we've got more to come as well. But I just think that slight change in mentality and the fact that Bonner has managed to create that as well. And I think that's why we go on to get a third and a fourth ultimately, which I don't think, we didn't do last season, and I don't think we would have been in our arsenal to do last season as well.
Or the season before.
Or that, yeah.
I'll stop going on before Lee just logs off. We made a couple of changes, and like you said, this squad, and 3 of the 4 signings that we got in early doors started the game. So it backs up that point that you just made about they've had maximum amount of time to get used to Mark Bonner and to get used to Gillingham Football Club. We made a double change. Rowe and Wakeling were withdrawn, and I think it was Jaden Clark, and it was great to see Joe Bode was trusted with sort of 25, 30 minutes as well, rather than 5 minutes here and there. I'll come back to you, Lee. I've written down, I didn't feel like we were massively under the cosh, but because of the scoreline, everything suddenly felt a bit more tense, and we were more aware that the game was back in the melting pot. How did you feel from an away fan's perspective? Did you feel like the tide was turning completely, or did you feel that the goal had come and it had given you a leg up, but you weren't bossing the game?
Well, what you got to remember as well at that point is we'd made our first sub. So we brought Ben Barkley off for Dan Butterworth, and Dan Butterworth is basically, well, no one seems to know what Dan Butterworth's best position is. I think he's kind of either a number 10 or a winger. He's very unpredictable. He's clearly got some ability. Has he got a football brain? I'm not convinced. So we sort of switched to a 4-3-3 at that point and pushed Dan Aduajay out wide, Butterworth on the left. And we pushed John Mellish into midfield, which is a tactic we used over the last 2-3 years. And because he actually played a full season there for us in the COVID season and scored 17 goals from midfield that season. So he's got ability to, play further. He played up front for us before as well, which tells you all you need to. He's a cult hero, John. Like, the fans absolutely love him because he will run all day. He's got a ridiculous engine on him.
Ross said that to me, and I started watching him after the goal yesterday, and then I was thinking they must have changed the system, because from sort of not seeing it first off, suddenly he was popping up on the left wing, or like you say, he was the highest player forward.
I mean,
and I just made a point of looking at him, and it totally summed him up. He's just a bloke that just absolutely runs.
Yeah.
And runs.
He's improved his ability over the last few years as well. He used to be a bit shambolic in the way he played, and actually, technically, he's got a lot better. I mean, he nearly scored a brilliant goal first half with a run from the left, and he cut inside and hit a right foot shot. It was straight at the keeper, but he nearly scored with that. And it took a big deflection, the goal when it went in, but it's typical him. He just gets a shot away and gets his chance. And I think the problem with that was it gave us a lift for a few minutes making that change, but with Wyke and J tiring a little bit up front, having done a lot of running in the first half, and not really having any options to change the two midfielders as well, who are both tiring. It kind of sort of caught up with us a little bit and going 4-3-3 left us a little bit more exposed. Oh, sorry, it's my alarm. Well, that is. Yeah, it left us a little bit exposed at the back, and Williams as well. That's his first, full 60 or whatever in a long time, and he really tired as we'll get onto for the third goal. But yeah, it kind of gave us a lift for a little bit, but it left us a little bit more exposed than we had been. I think we'd actually looked pretty solid for the majority of it, and suddenly as you mentioned, we had to throw things forward to try and get into the game, and it sort of changed the way things were. You guys were able to, you played it very well in that you were like, right, well, let's just sit here and hit them on the break when we can, knowing that they're going to be tiring quite a bit. And the only other midfielder we had on the bench was a lad called Jake Allen, who, I mean, he looks like a 31-year-old scaffolder because he's a unit, but he's a third-year apprentice, so he's not a first-team player. And he was there to fill a space, if we're being brutally honest.
Because you only had 6 subs anyway, didn't you?
No, we had all 7, I think, but Alan was the 6th, the 7th.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. That it was 6 plus the academy kid who was only, there was a space on the bench.
He's basically to fill a space essentially. So it was kind of it was frustrating that we sort of tired off a little bit there. But having looked back at it with hindsight, it was kind of inevitable. And any team that goes into the season with 6 midfielders and 4 of them are injured with mid to long term injuries, they're going to struggle early on. Really, if you have to play centre back in midfield in your first game, it's not going to be easy.
No one wants to be doing square pegs, round holes at the best of times, but let alone opening day against a side that were in front of a big home crowd as well.
Yeah.
And I guess that emphasises the point, Rhys. If you're a team that's 2-0 down and then you score, from a home perspective, we were probably expecting some sort of Alamo situation for a period at least, but it never really felt like it materialised. I think the only chance they had, which I thought was soft, was a free kick that was bent over the wall, but comfortably wide of Jake Turner's post. It wasn't, again, it goes back to that point I made. I never felt like we were massively under the cosh or under constant pressure, even at 2-1. It was just the fact that the scoreline changed the feeling in the ground slightly. But I'm going to be nice. Talk me through Jack Nolan's goal.
It was, well, when I did this one, I saw him run down the right-hand side, I thought, he's going to run out of options very quickly. And then I thought, oh no, but he's a really good player. He might make something of this. And it's something that we haven't had for a while. To see something of that quality, to create a chance himself. This tackle on that right-hand side, I don't know who made it. Was it Williams? Quite soft, actually.
Yeah, it was the left back who I think Lee said was very, very tired at that point. But that's nothing to do with Jack Nolan, is it? He's just
no, it isn't. But in the same way, it has to do it. It has to make the run, has to get past his man. But then I just, it's one of those situations where you see often someone bolts down the right or the left wing, and then there's no players have made the advancement to support, and it kind of fizzles into nothing. But as it showed, Nolan has the ability to get a shot on target with power, cut inside and then put it in the roof of the net. I mean, if people are having to go at Lewis for not saving that, then I noticed that you're near post. But I think actually, if you've hit it with that velocity, that's a tricky one to get something on. Speaking from a goalkeeper's experience as well, that is a hard one to save because he's hit that with some pace and power, and it's just rifled in the roof of the net. And I can only imagine the sound that made at the back of the net. That rippling sound must have been quite nice.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Colin or Julian had goal cam down there, because it will be nice to hear that one.
Yeah.
And yeah, it comes back to what we used to talk about last season when it seemed every goal we conceded we had to blame someone. I think sometimes you just have to put your hands up and say the attacking player's been bloody good and it's a bloody good goal. I wouldn't put any blame on Lewis on that one, and we'll get to the fourth one in a minute and talk to Lee about that. But at that point, it felt like game over. Then the second point of concern for Gills was that Connor Masterson sat down and had to go off and was replaced by Shadogi, which is a great situation to be in, that you can bring Shadogi off the bench with 15 minutes to play. And it's since come out that apparently Connor's got some sort of tendonitis in his ankle at the moment, which just means on rock hard pitches he's struggling a bit, but should be fine. We had another chance, didn't we, straight after? And I think at this point it's fair to say that Carlisle were looking a little bit ragged, and it's certainly very, very tired. Great ball from only little over the top. Jack Nolan times his run from outside the left back in really, really well. Skips past Lewis again, and it's only a defender that gets back on the line to prevent it from being 4-1. I'm guessing from your point of view, Lee, at that point, you were just wanting the final whistle.
I don't know. I still kind of felt at that point if we could have got another goal, it could have really opened the game back up again a little bit. And I mean, in terms of chances, we didn't really have that many clear-cut chances after that. That said, Dan Butterworth went very close for a free kick. I mean, you were probably behind that goal and probably saw it better. It looked to me like it wasn't actually that far off. It may be a yard or two wide, but height-wise, it wasn't
bit
too
further
bad.
than that. I've got it. I think I caught it on the match day live. I'd have to have a look back, but I don't think Blake Turner was in any sort of danger of it going in.
It looked fairly well hit. I mean, we haven't had a good free
kick
taker for a long time, to be fair. So it's not really that we get very excited about any chance like that. It was kind of like at that point, it's like, right, don't do anything silly. Don't end up getting trounced here. It was probably the feeling. I mean, I mentioned before, obviously, the fact that I felt could Rhys have done. Could Rhys get ahead of himself here? Could Lewis have done a little bit better with Nolan's goal? I think the big issue with that one was letting him turn back inside onto his left foot, because you know he's left foot and you know what he wants to do. And I think Simo said the same. Said just show him down on his right, show him on his right, and if he does something from there, you say fair play. So you've given him that chance. Watching it back, yeah, it's well struck. It's a difficult one for him. But yeah, it kind of we were very ragged at that point. I think we could probably have done with getting Kelly and Armstrong on a bit sooner. In the end, they only got a few minutes on the pitch, and it was just kind of a bit of a waste, really, not making that change sooner than he did.
We kept watching them warm up, because obviously they're warming up down where we were sat, and I kept saying to Boz again, like, they're 2-1 down, they're 3-1 down. Why are they not, like? I know it's first game, but at least surely you always say if you're going to lose having a go. Don't just let the game drift to its conclusion. And then they got bought on 88 minutes when we were 4-1 up. And I just thought it was a little bit insulting to the pair of them, to be quite frank.
The problem was that they're both just central strikers, really. We didn't have any wingers left. We haven't signed any wingers this summer, just a bit of a bone of contention, because we do have a habit of switching from 3-5-2 to 4-3-3, because Mellish has that ability to go into midfield quite a lot. We did that in the season we got promoted. But we had options who could play on the wing then. We had Jordan Gibson, we had Amari Patrick, we had J.K. Gordon. We don't really have that now. But Butterworth's Butterworth's not really a natural winger in that sense. And yeah, Aduajay can probably play that role maybe, and Armstrong does a lot of running, but he's not a winger, and neither is Kelly. He's a big nuisance up front, really. So yeah, it was just a bit of a weird one. We probably would have had to change formation at that point, maybe gone to playing Butterworth just behind the front too. But yeah, the game was pretty much gone by then. Look, we've had to bring on Jack Ellis to replace Ben Williams at left back, and Jack Ellis is actually at right back, so he's filling in a role there essentially. And he's not going to get down the wing and whip crosses it in the way that Ben Williams was. So we were quite. It was it was square pegs in round holes at that point, really. So it was kind of like we're sort of chasing the game, but really with no sort of plan.
No, I just thought if you just chuck them on a bit earlier and just almost just cause havoc by just flinging diagonals into the box, because if you've got Wyke and you've got him and them two, you suddenly you might get on knockdowns and that type of thing. That was just why I questioned it a little bit. And the reason it was 4-1 was because, for me, of a very good goal. And I'll encourage Lee to watch my angle of the fourth goal again before maybe he criticises Harry Lewis on this one. I thought it was just a very, very good touch and hit from Johnny Williams. We were right behind it, albeit the other end of the pitch. But for me, it looks like it's pretty much in the corner, and it's gone through people as well. And I'm not sure. I'll come to you, Lee. Rhys, ex-goalkeeper. Is it one we should be criticising him of, or is it on the other side of the fence where we're saying just credit Johnny Williams for some ridiculously good technique?
To use a really nice German word, Jein. Yes, no. It's one of those ones which is like I think some keepers would maybe get something on it. Some really experienced goalkeepers dived a little bit early, tried to read it, but the no comes from like when it's gone through a crowd of players, and even though he sort of kind of chipped it up for himself, he hits it hard, hits it quick, and it's a situation which any goalkeeper would struggle to get across, particularly because the ball came in from the goalkeeper's perspective on the left hand side, so naturally he's a bit maybe moved over to the left hand side, and the ball ends up on the right hand side of the net from the goalkeeper's perspective. So he's got a lot of movement to make to try and get across, considering the phase just before that. I think it would be very harsh to put all of the blame on Lewis, considering the ball was gone for a sea of players. I would hope there were a few more Carlisle defenders to encroach to try and get a block in. That's maybe where the first critique could be, if there was one. But I think by looking at trying to find fault with players in the Card defence and goalkeeper, you're taking away the quality that Johnny Williams put on the shot. And I think that needs to be credited more so than the faults that the Carlisle defence may have put into that goal. And for me, the shot was sweet. The volley was great. He took it on the half volley, actually. And I'm really happy that he's got a goal in the league and it's in the first game as well. He looked delighted.
That's his first league goal for us, having joined a year ago, Lee, as well. Just another stat to rub it in. But I mean, for a player of Johnny Williams' ability, that's something he certainly needed to improve on. And it's great to see him get off the mark. And I think he celebrated in a way that was just almost as much relief as in ecstasy, the fact that it had found the bottom of the net. From the game perspective, that was essentially it. The final whistle went a few minutes later, and it looked like a very comfortable afternoon, but it was probably anything but, aside from the last 15 minutes when Carlisle was stretched and tired and had a lot of square pegs in round holes. So I want to ask you, Lee, to sum up, how concerned are you by that performance or result? Or are we just putting it down to a few injuries, it's opening day, and there's still 45 games and plenty of points to play for?
I am the eternal optimist, so I am not quite as concerned. But actually, if you read fan reaction, I think it's very mixed. There are some who are like being level-headed and going, look, it's the first game. And actually, there are encouraging signs. I think a few people were quite angry after the game last night, and I've actually seen a few comments this morning from them saying, actually, having had time to reflect about it and sober up maybe in a few cases,
yeah,
it's actually it's not as bad a performance as we think, and we were a bit ragged chasing the game later on. I mean, that fourth goal is frustrating. It's for me because there's 7 players there and no one gets close to Williams to try and block him.
Which is why I thought it was more on maybe them than it was Harry Lewis, which you sort of insinuated a little bit.
Sitting far too deep, and I've watched it back again there, and Lewis doesn't really dive until the ball bounces just in front of him, which for me, that's my issue. It's not so much the fact that, could he got to it, he just didn't react quickly enough. But anyway, moving away from that, for me, if we can get a couple of midfielders in before next weekend, I'm not fussed about the Stoke game in the cup. I really couldn't care less about that result in that. That's not really urgent. If we can get a couple of midfielders in before next weekend, I would be much more encouraged. We need a number 10. It's something we were like, even before, the injury, we didn't really have a number 10. I mean, if you look back in the last few seasons, we had Jordan Gibson could play in that role, and Jordan, you might have seen, had an excellent debut for Doncaster. Yes, he scored a brilliant goal from the edge of the box.
He was one that I mentioned to Ross the other day and said, "Is it because when I did the season preview, I had him down as a potential key departure?" And he said that things had gone on and it was the right time for both parties. Which is
100%. 100% right time for him.
It just felt like you played. It was like there was no real fluidity to what you did yesterday. Everything was a little bit sort of desperate at times. It was, there's a 5, there's a 3, there's a 2. Whereas I felt we had more fluidity in the sense that we had natural width, which meant they could go inside or out. We had a 10 who could drop into pockets of space and play between the lines. It just felt a bit too rigid for me from a Carlisle perspective.
It's 100%. And it needs someone who's a little bit more forward thinking in that midfield. Because like I said, Neil and Vela will run all day and they will put themselves about. And their pressing was excellent, actually, for the first half. They won the ball back so many times and got into some really good positions. I mean, there's a slight argument. I completely forgot about this. Could Vela maybe have had a penalty in the first half? I don't know. I thought we could have made a bit more of it. The one where he sort of went around the keeper and the defender slid in. I'm not sure the defender actually got the ball, but he didn't make anything of it, which makes me wonder maybe it wasn't a penalty. But yeah, it just kind of feels like we're lacking that number 10. That player is going to pick that little pass, and when you've got players like Wyke up front, who's a real quality finisher, you need someone who's going to slot that ball through to him sometimes. And actually, the 2 wing backs had really good games until obviously they tired later on, and we didn't really in the second half get Mellish into the game in the way that we do. First half, he was really causing problems getting up and down with Williams and overlapping and underlapping. And I think, pretty much most of our play came down the left in the first half, whereas the second half, actually, it all started coming down the right a lot, which is a bit like, okay, that's a bit strange. But obviously, Williams tiring, you guys getting the second goal maybe knocked us back a little bit, and then obviously Mellish pushed into midfield, which made a difference. And my worry is that that's becoming that. I don't want that to become the habit of our tactic again. Of just, if we're struggling, just push Mellish into midfield and cause a bit of chaos, which is great fun to watch. And actually, the season we went up, when we did that, we didn't do it when we were behind. We did it when we were level usually. So when it was like 1-1 or something like that, or 0-0, and we weren't quite getting it, we're like, right, let's put Mellish in there and let's go front foot and try and get that winner. When you're chasing the game, it's a little bit different, I think. So I just want to see us sign a couple of midfielders this week. And the thing is, we've got the budget to do it now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a feeling of actually, it's opening weekend. There's bound to be a few players who are a bit miffed that they've been left out of their match day squads on the opening day who now want moves. So there's probably going to be a new bunch of players suddenly become available. And hopefully there's someone in there that you go, right, let's get them in and they can make a difference to us.
Well, not that I'm trying to get rid of him, but I know George Lapsley's available for transfer. And he could probably fulfil that number 10 role, couldn't he? So, but, it's a long way from home, isn't it? And that type of thing. It's not just as easy as, computer games and FIFA where you go, I like that player, I'll go and buy him and that type of thing. Rhys, from our point of view, I think there's certainly stuff that needs improving and ironing out and tweaking and that type of thing. But I think with the people like Ethan Coleman and Josh Andrews, Marcus Wiley, Elliot Nevitt, Jules Lapsley, who we've mentioned, all not being even in the squad yesterday. And there's probably a trio that were playing to a degree patched up in Connor Masterson and Marnie Little and Johnny Williams off the bench. We can't be anything but encouraged by that result, can we? If not the whole performance.
Yeah, I think so. I think because it's not, for me, it's very, very cliche to say we're not the finished article, but it's nice to be able to say that and come away with a victory such as yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction to make compared to seasons previously. But I think it's always very the play yesterday was great. We played how we did, and we got a really nice 4-1 victory. But it's also really important just to tamper the expectations to a certain extent and go, we're not going to go out and win 4-1 every game. They're going to be harder games. They're going to be easier games. They're going to be games where we deserve to win and haven't, and vice versa. And I think that's indicative of the whole season. But it's for once really nice to really stamp your mark on the first competitive game of the campaign, and know that there's more to come from what we have in the tank, and that can only be positive and promising.
Yeah, I remember again going back to what I said to Luke at half time, and he had a couple of question marks over Jacob Wakeling. And there was a couple of questions in our WhatsApp group. Is he lightweight? And I said, no, I don't think he's lightweight. I said, but if Jacob Wakeling is a player that wants to play on the shoulder and run in behind, and then we're playing big balls into Timmy Dieng and into Jacob Wakeling up against Tyrrell Thomas, John Mellish, and Aaron Hayden, who are all 6 foot plus brutes in the nicest sense of the way, that doesn't mean that he's lightweight, Jacob. It just means we're not playing to his strengths. And then when we got ball to feet, albeit we got a massive helping hand from Thomas, you saw what Jacob Wakeling was all about. Lee, back to you before we finish up. I just want to ask, and I know it's 90 minutes and that's all it is at the moment, but what did you make of Gills, and what do you think we can achieve this season?
I think with the fact that you've got a few players out as well, as you mentioned there, I thought you look a very well driven side. I thought first half you gave the ball away a lot. Well, that would concern me a little bit, because I think against a team that's a bit more ready than we are, got a fully available squad, they might take advantage of that a bit more. They might have punished you in that first half in the way that we didn't. But the key thing is you were very calm and collected in the way you played, and the fact that second half you didn't panic at all. You were like, right, we're going to let them have the ball a bit more. They can come forward, but we're going to hit them on the break. And the fact that you look a lot more settled than us as well. I mean, to get a 4-1 win on the opening day is a good result either way.
Yeah.
You're likely to have a good season when you start off like that. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, I don't know who have you got up next for your next game.
We go to Swansea in the cup, but again, similar to your attitude with that, it's not a competition that's going to be top of the priority list. It'll be about probably getting people minutes that need it. We then go to Morecambe next Saturday and Fleetwood the week after, and then finish up with Chesterfield at home this month. So,
I mean, Morecambe away is your first away game. It's a long journey, but probably the best time to be playing them, because they're very much trying to find their feet. So I won't be surprised if you've got another good result there as well, to be fair. So Yeah, I was. I mean, look, as I mentioned to you when we did our chat for my pod, I, I I think all of us have predicted you to finish in the top 7, and nothing there from watching that has changed my mind. I don't think you're quite top 3 quality. Maybe with a couple of signings, you could get yourselves up there, but I feel like a top 7 finish is well within your reach.
Yeah, and I think just with you, Rhys, that's probably summed it up perfectly, isn't it? We said there's bits that need ironing out. I think some of the time we gave the ball away because Mark Bonner's encouraged us to try and express ourselves and play forward. So it ultimately means it's not always going to come off. But he has said it has to be within a structure and within a set of rules. We can't just go doing what we want. So last question is man of the match sponsors yesterday was Jack Nolan, which I get it. He was a threat. He scored a very good goal. And he's going to do that all season, I feel, if he stays fit. But I just wanted to mention Robbie McKenzie, who I think is a player that's benefited from having a pre-season in one position. We know he's, jack of all trades. He can play left back, he can play right back, he'll fill in at centre back, he'll play centre midfield. How good was he yesterday? I thought he was very impressive throughout. I know a couple of times he gave the ball away. There was one instance, second half, where he's driven forward and ended up in an area that's probably a bit advanced for him, and he's picked the wrong pass. But I thought, all in all, throughout pre-season and especially yesterday afternoon, I thought he was very, very good. And he set the tone in that first 15 minutes.
I think one of the downsides of being a versatile player in position-wise is that sometimes you can't really develop one specific skill within one specific location. And the fact that Mackenzie's now in a place where he can sort of refine a particular position and try and hone his skills in that particular area of the pitch, it was demonstrated really well yesterday, and I thought he had a very solid performance and just was the quiet engine of that Central Park. And I just thought he was just controlling it, had a calm game and was just calm, collected, could did all the jobs that a central player needs to do. A bit of defending we needed, a bit of attacking we needed, calm the play down, pass the ball where it needs to. I just thought it was a solid performance in the centre of the park, and I was very impressed with him yesterday. He really stood out for me on that pitch amongst all of the 4 different goal scorers we had. I thought that he was a solid performance from McKenzie. It's nice to see him in a position which is his and can feel comfortable playing in.
Yeah, it feels like he's got the shirt at the moment, and it'd be great when we have Ethan Coleman back as the natural defensive midfielder. But at the moment, Robbie's in possession, and he's done certainly. It's one game I get again. We have to keep reiterating that, but he's done nothing wrong to want anyone to think that he's not going to be in the team for the foreseeable future, at least, which is great to see. Because there is a risk of being jack of all trades, master of none, and it's nice to see him getting a concerted run in one position and doing it really well, gentlemen. As always, really appreciate your time, especially yours, Lee, because I know it's not great having to come on and relive a spanking, certainly on the first day when optimism is fairly high before kickoff. So I really do appreciate it. Rhys, as always, great to have you back, mate.
Thank you.
It's been a good afternoon, a good weekend. Yes, a good start for the Gills. So thank you so much for the support on the channel this weekend. I think the preview's gone over 1,100 views. The match day live's gone absolutely ridiculous. It's done over 1,500 in the first sort of 12 hours, which is absolutely incredible. So I appreciate that. Please keep hitting that subscribe button. I think it's just 4 now for 3,300. So I do appreciate the support. Like I said, go and follow Rhys, subscribe to his channel, go and check out all of Lee and the Brunton Bugles content for a Carlisle perspective of the weekend. Be back later in the week to preview Morecambe. But until then, hope you've had a good weekend, and up the Gills.